Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. It's Lisa here from Holistic Health by Lisa Moan. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Mediterranean diet and ADHD. And just to let you know, next week we'll be talking about gluten and the impact that that has on behaviour. So you might think that's a bit strange talking about the Mediterranean diet tonight, and then next week talking about gluten and the effect that has on behaviour. But unfortunately, I'm here to tell you that the Mediterranean diet is not all about pizza and pasta. So when you think of the Mediterranean, you think of Italy, you think of pizza, pasta, maybe a little bit of wine. And although those foods are eaten there, that is not what the Mediterranean diet is. So the Mediterranean diet is a really healthy way of just eating whole foods. It's not about eliminating types of foods. It's about eating whole, unprocessed, real foods. But it's also about the way that you eat the food. So we'll be talking about both of those aspects tonight, both what the food is and what the way of eating is. And then at the end, we'll talk about the research with the Mediterranean diet and ADHD and what the research actually says. And it's really great. So keep listening for that. So the Mediterranean diet is based on plants. So it's not a vegan diet. It is a plant-based diet. But if you read my posts or you follow me for a while, you'll know that I do encourage children to have animal products in their diet, and so does the Mediterranean diet. So lots of vegetables, lots of leafy green vegetables, often wild. Often, in the Mediterranean, people just pick weeds essentially and eat those as leafy green vegetables. Lots of seasonal fruit, lots of nuts, lots of seeds, and also contains whole grains. Now, lots of people don't do well with whole grains, so that is one caveat that I would have for the Mediterranean diet. So that if you've been on something like GAPS diet or a paleo diet and that's really worked for you to exclude the grains, then certainly don't introduce them because of this. So work with a practitioner and find out if grains actually agree with you or not. But the grains that are in the Mediterranean diet are whole grains. And when I say whole grains, I mean whole grains. So you can actually look at the grain and see the grain. So things like brown rice, black rice, oats, where what you see is what you get. Don't be misled by marketing claims on some things like breakfast cereals and breads where they say whole grains, but when you look at that clearly, there are no whole grains in there. The whole grains have been taken and ground down to really fine flour so they can be incorporated into those foods. And although technically and legally it is correct to say that those are whole grains, they don't have the same health benefits. So only eat whole grains where you can see the actual grain. And if you do eat grains and you're happy to say that they agree with you or agree with your child, they still shouldn't be the main part of the meal. So it's not about having a big plate of rice and then a bit of meat and a sniffling of vegetables on the side. It should be about having heaps and heaps of veggies, meat as a side, and a small portion of rice aside. So just make sure that the proportions that you're having of grains are correct and grains aren't dominating your diet. Now moving on to nuts and seeds, really super healthy foods, great source of protein, essential fatty acids, but they have to be raw. So never roasted nuts, never salted nuts. And I'm not anti-salt. Salt is fine, especially if it's like Celtic sea salt or something. But the oil that they use to make roasted or salted nuts is the really, really rubbish oil, the really inflammatory canola oil, sunflower oil. You don't want to have those oils in your diet. So for that reason, go for raw nuts all the time, never the roasted, salted ones. And speaking of oil, olive oil is the poster child for the Mediterranean diet. So put that wherever you would use oil. So on salads, you can put it on your vegetables, things like on your carrots, on your pumpkin, use olive oil for all of that. And you can cook with it. I know there's a little bit of controversy sometimes about that, but you can cook with it. I just wouldn't use the super expensive extra virgin olive oil for cooking because you're losing some of the health benefits in cooking. So just use the standard organic olive oil for that. Mediterranean diet also includes dairy, which most people are really happy about, but only a specific sort of dairy. So only fermented dairy. So we're talking things like cheese. So cheese is okay. Kefir, yogurt, all those fermented dairies, never just milk. Like, it's not about milkshakes, it's not about ice cream, it's not about lattes. So if you're going to have dairy in your diet and you're happy that that agrees with you and agrees with your child, then make sure it's always fermented. And then the other foods that are in a Mediterranean diet are fish, preferably wild caught, eggs, organic free-range eggs, not like from some little cage somewhere, and poultry, so chicken, turkey, duck. There is less red meat in the Mediterranean diet than in many other styles of eating, but I think it's really important to note that lots of kids have low iron and have anemia, and then that leads on to sleep issues, behavioural issues, immunity issues. So be careful that you don't limit red meat too much, and maybe just have small portions very frequently to make sure your child's getting iron. Or if you want the best bang for your buck, go for the liver, and then that's got like so many nutrients that you don't have to have it very often. And always choose organic. So not only are there ethical and moral issues about eating non-organic meat, there's also nutritional reasons to eat organic meat, and that's because the profile of fatty acids is much more positive in organic meat than in farmed, sort of cheaper meat. And then to other ways to get protein on the Mediterranean diet, if you are limiting the red meat and the chicken, is to make sure you're having lots of legumes, so properly prepared legumes, lots of nuts, lots of seeds. And I mentioned at the start that it's also about the way that you eat. So the Mediterranean diet is really, it's a slow, relaxed, sociable way of eating. It's not about grabbing something when you're running out the door in the morning. It's not about eating in the car on the way to soccer practice. It's about sitting down with your family, enjoying the meal that somebody has cooked, talking about your day. All those aspects of the Mediterranean diet are really important, and they're not so much about the food, but to do with the attitude to the food and the social aspect. So, as I said, I'm just going to talk about the research with ADHD and the Mediterranean diet and what it says. This won't take long because it is so clear cut that there's not really that much to say. But basically, the research shows that ADHD is associated with a lower adherence to the Mediterranean diet. So that means children who eat a Mediterranean diet have less chance of having ADHD. So that's amazing and great. It's great because it's not a hard diet to follow. It's just about eating real food and eating it with your family. So it's not an extreme, cut out this, cut out that, do 3 weeks of this and 2 months of that. It's just about eating real food, lots of nuts, lots of seeds, lots of vegetables. And if you dive into the research a little bit more for the details of what the researchers actually saw, is that children who don't eat enough fruit and vegetables, who skip breakfast and who eat fast food are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than children who eat more fruits and vegetables, eat breakfast and don't eat fast food. So I saw something on Facebook the other day about someone saying, about breakfast. Should kids eat breakfast? And people saying, nah, if they're not hungry, don't worry. But really, kids should eat breakfast because that's what sets them up for a day of learning and a day of concentration at school. And if your child doesn't want breakfast, then you need to look at why that is. So there's usually underlying reasons, either lifestyle reasons or biochemical reasons why they don't want it. So you need to find what that is. Other habits in the research that led to more ADHD were having soft drinks and not eating enough fatty fish. So ditch the lemonade, ditch the Kirks, and eat more salmon and oysters. So if that all sounds pretty reasonable and something that you'd like to investigate further, don't forget that I have an online program which goes for 6 weeks, and it is based on a Mediterranean diet style of eating, and it is also gluten-free. But there's meal plans, there's lots of training videos to watch. So just jump onto the first page of my website and you'll see the link to get started on that, because that's something you can start tonight in the summer holidays. So next week we'll be talking about gluten and the impact that that can have on your child's behaviour. So join me next Monday at 7:30 and I'll be explaining the reasons for that. Thank you for listening.